Once upon a time, in a tiny little town, there lived a boy called Francis. He was very kind and very sweet, and sometimes he thought about things a little too much. One day, he was with his friends. They were talking about their dreams. At night, they talked about dreams, where they could fly, dreams where they became animals, or dreams where they met birds that could talk. They had dreams about magical lands and places that didn't exist. Every dream they talked about sounded like a wonderful, bright adventure, but Francis couldn't join in. You see, Francis never remembered his dreams. He didn't know what it was like to dream of flying. He had no idea what it would be like to meet a bird, could talk. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't work out how to see a place that didn't exist. Francis wondered if maybe something was wrong. Maybe the bit inside him for dreaming didn't work, or maybe he had forgotten how to remember dreams. His friends were talking about dreams where they got magical powers. When they realized Francis hadn't said anything, they asked him what he thought about his dreams, but of course he couldn't remember any. Francis didn't want them to think he was strange, so he told them that he was feeling tired and wanted to go home on the way home. Francis walked through the park. He looked up at the wide, beautiful sky. It was pale blue with white, fluffy clouds. The sun was starting to go down, so the horizon was yellow and pink, and the bottom of each cloud was a little bit orange. He took a deep breath in and listened to the sound of the birds they were singing, an evening song. He looked at the sky and wished with all his heart to be able to remember his dreams. Then he kept walking. He went through the park gates and down the narrow stone street that led to the small woods. The small woods were like the name suggests, small. All the trees were slim and short, and no one really knew why Francis loved to walk through them and pretend that he was a giant. So that's what Francis started to do that evening. Maybe he thought it would distract him from thinking about dreams. He crashed through the fallen leaves and listened to the crunch of the ground as he walked in. The background was the gurgling sound of a stream. Francis stomped towards it. The water was clear and smooth. He could see the reflections of the trees and the pink sunset sky. As soon as Francis saw the sky, he remembered all about the fact that he didn't remember his dreams. He picked up a stone from the ground. It was cold and hard with one jagged edge. He threw it into the stream with all his might and wished to be able to remember his dreams. Then Francis carried on through the woods. He followed the stream because he knew it would take him to his house. It wound through the woods until there were no more woods. Then it trickled out into a big field of wheat. Francis held out his hand so that his fingers could touch the top of the wheat. It felt warm and scratchy. Then the shape of Francis's house appeared. He hurried towards it because the sun was going down fast. The air smelled of wheat and something delicious. His mom must be cooking something for dinner, sure enough. When Francis walked through his front door, his mum was pulling his favourite food out of the oven. Francis washed his hands and sat down with his family. He was just about to eat the first bite when he remembered his problem with dreams. He wished again with all his might to be able to remember his dreams. Then he ate his delicious dinner. The rest of Francis's evening passed. Normally he helped his dad clean up from dinner, played a game with his sister and walked the dog with his mum. But when he went upstairs to bed, something very not normal happened. There sitting on his windowsill was a very small lady. She had dark curly hair and a big kind smile. Her clothes were colourful and glittery. In one hand, she carried a tiny red and yellow suitcase. Francis immediately asked who she was and what she was doing. The lady laughed. She told him that she was called the Dream Tell, and she had come to tell him his dreams. Francis was so surprised that he didn't say anything for a few moments. She explained that her job was to record all the dreams that never get remembered. It was important work because sometimes people really do need to remember their dreams. When a person needs to remember, all they have to do is make 3 strong wishes and the dream teller will come. Now Francis was good at thinking. He thought about what she had said and he saw a problem. He asked her where she kept all the dreams that never got remembered. There must be millions, and laughed. Then she showed him her suitcase. Francis looked at it. There was no way that the dreams could all be in that tiny bag, he thought. But the dream teller laid the suitcase down on Francis's bedroom floor and opened it all of a sudden. A huge purple and blue tent erupted out of the suitcase. It was so big that it only just fit inside the room. Its sides even got a bit squashed by Francis's bookshelf and wardrobe. But the dream teller didn't seem to worry. She opened up the front flap and walked inside, not knowing what else to do. Francis followed her, and when he got inside, his jaw dropped the walls. And ceiling of the tent looked just like a galaxy of stars. But they didn't stay still. They shimmered and shined and swirled. Francis felt like he was looking at the real night sky. In the center of the tent was a round golden table, and on top of the table was a big, clear crystal ball. The dream tell brought Francis to the ball. She looked up at the stars around them and called Francis's name. The stars all started swirling until one star popped out of the wall and floated into the crystal ball. As soon as the star touched the ball, images filled it up. Francis peered inside. They were like little movies and all of them had one main character, him. The dream tell explained that these were all the dreams that he had forgotten. Francis watched the dreams eagerly. Each time he watched a dream, he remembered it completely, as if he had never forgotten it. There were dreams about talking animals. There were dreams about places he'd never seen before. There were even flying dreams, where Francis flew over places he'd never visited. As Francis watched, his heart filled with joy. He was so happy to know that he did have dreams, just like everyone else. The dream teller smiled to see him so happy. He watched and watched. But she didn't seem to mind. Slowly, Francis became more and more tired. Soon he was so sleepy that his eyelids started to close, but he didn't want to stop watching his dreams. The dream teller smiled. She understood. She pulled out a tiny crystal ball from inside her pocket. The dream teller gave it to Francis and explained that if he put it under his pillow, it would record all of his dreams from now on. If he ever wanted to see them, he could just look inside the crystal ball. Francis was so happy that he gave her a big hug. The dream tell tapped her crystal ball. The star popped out of it and joined the other stars on the wall. Then she took Francis outside the tent and back into his bedroom. As soon as they stepped out of the tent, it shrank back into the tiny suitcase with a pop. Francis held the small crystal ball in his hand and thanked the dream teller. She smiled and told him that she was happy to do her job. Then she explained that she had a full night ahead of her and had to go. She opened the window and, just like magic, she simply floated out into the night air. Francis watched her go. If it weren't for the crystal ball in his hand, he would have told himself that he was simply imagining things. but instead he looked at his warm, comfortable bed. He climbed inside and pulled the bed covers around him. He thought about how he would be able to tell his friends all about his dreams now. At that thought, his whole body seemed to glow with happiness, but he was so tired he yawned, a great big yawn. His arms and legs were getting heavier and heavier. He felt his head sink into the pillow beneath him. He took a slow, soothing breath in. He felt so warm and comfortable. Gently he closed his eyes. Sleep was calling his name, and this time his dreams would be remembered. He sighed softly, and before he could think another thought, he drifted off into a deep, deep sleep where he would dream about sunset streams, magical tents, and the night sky that fit inside a blue and purple tent that lived in a tiny red and yellow suitcase.